I'm Sherman D. Manning coming live from Los Angeles, California. It's 9:54 on the West Coast, almost 1 o'clock in the morning in Atlanta, Georgia, my hometown. And it is almost 7 o'clock in the morning in Switzerland. If you see Donald, who's running for president, tell him I said, if you see him, if you happen to see Donald anywhere, tell him I said, you understand? Just tell him I said hello. Listen to me, ladies and gentlemen. Sherman D. Manning coming live from the West Coast. What an awesome day it is. What an awesome day it is. Somebody was bragging to me the other day on Cedars-Sinai Hospital. And they were talking about the fact that Cedars-Sinai is a class act. It is a classy hospital. Customer service, if you will, or shall I say patient services, are splendiferous. And they were talking about the people are entirely professional, and it is just a great, great hospital. First-rate, 5-star hospital, if you will. And I was thinking today that I would rather be standing where I am right now, crossing the street, in Los Angeles, California during this walking podcast. I'd rather be right here than to be in the finest hospitals in the country. And believe you me, ladies and gentlemen, I've spent my fair share of time plus some other lives and some other person's fair share in hospital rooms. You might recall, and if you read my book, The Truth About O.J. Simpson, Race, Class, Money, and Justice, you would have read about the fact that I had what's called disseminated valley fever, or coccidioidomycosis. Disseminated valley fever. And I spent 14 months of my life in a hospital room. 1 month and 2 days I was in a hospital bed. And for the first 10 months, they thought I was going to die. They thought I was going to die. And so I know what it's like to be in a hospital room. And what adds insult to injury is when you are a prisoner. Because as a prisoner, you get no visitors. And the only persons who you see on a daily basis are hospital staff. And as a prisoner, guards standing around, many of whom are filled with spite and hate, anger. Many of whom will actually make bets outside my door on whether or not I would die on a particular night. It's really sick. Some of the people, it's sickening when you contemplate and think about some of the people who have taken jobs in prisons. A horrible, horrible place and horrible people. I met some of the most dangerous, violent, vicious, obstreperous, bellicose people I ever met in my entire lifetime. I met them in prison. And some of them were actually inmates. Yes, some of them were inmates. Many of them were guards. If you find Matt Doran over at Crime Watch TV, Crime Watch Daily, tell him I want to talk to him. Tell him I want to talk to him. He talked about drugs, cameras, and cell phones being smuggled into prisons. And his colleague in Atlanta, my hometown, her last name is Sears. Can't think of her first name. She did an interview with several inmates, and she basically came up with the idea that most cell phones are smuggled in by visitors doing visiting. Absolute mendacity. Well over 90% of the cell phones which are smuggled into prisons come directly from the hand of the guards. I was there. I spent more than 1 decade of my life wrongly convicted, trapped in moral darkness with vicious men. And I'm here to tell you what I know to be true. Most of the weapons The alcohol, the drugs, the cell phones were smuggled in by John Q. prison guard, not by Jody Q. visitor. So that is a lie. Now, always ask yourself the motive of the lie. What's the reasoning behind it? CDC lies because they don't want the public to know that it's their guards that's smuggling this stuff in, because then the public might demand a change. Prison is a dark and dismal place, which is why it should be the last resort. We've got to stop sending young boys to big old prisons for small, minor crimes. Got to stop that. Because what happens is this, and I talk about this, I'm cross-promoting tonight, I guess. I talk about this in my book titled Creating Monsters. If you go to cafepress.com/Manning, you can get the book. That's CAFEPRESS.com/Manning, MANNING. Get my book, Creating Monsters. I talk about anytime you take an 18 or 19-year-old boy and put him in an adult prison, and let's say he goes in with a sentence of 5 years. First and foremost, there's a strong likelihood that he will not ever make it out of prison alive. Secondly, there's an even stronger chance, and it is even more likely, quite frankly, that he will end up serving 10 or 15 years instead of just a 5-year sentence to which he was sentenced by a judge. And that is because he will be forced by gang members to be initiated into the gang, and if he was already a gang member before he got there, he will have to what they call put in work. And putting in work means stab a child molester, stab a rapo, do something violent to another inmate for whatever reason. He may owe the gang drugs, and they will get a kid, 19 years old, who has a date, as we call it. Having a date is colloquial for meaning you don't have a life sentence. So this guy has a date, and it's almost like they do this on purpose. Let's get him more time in prison so he can stay here with us, and we can screw him and do this, that, and the other. Oh, there are all kind of things that go on in prisons that will blow some of your minds. I would tell American women, well over 85% of the guys in prison are undercover gays. I'm not judging, speaking fact. Well over 85% of the men in prison are secretly engaging in homosexual activity. And about 30 to 40% of them are openly gay. Okay? And there's no, I want to be careful about my wording. I was going to say there's no reason, there's no excuse for this, but I think a person who was born gay, excuse me, I'm so sorry, would tell you they don't need an excuse to be that way. But however you want to read it, for the sake of the argument, let me just say it that way without offending anyone. I'm not saying that going to prison is an excuse for being gay. I'm saying when you put a person in that environment, and they are weak-minded and vulnerable and gullible and highly sexualized because they're a teenager. That's California drivers where you hear those horns. They have a tendency to try something as a release, and then they will enjoy it, and many of them will keep doing it until they get out, and then go right back to their lady friend telling her how much they love her, and she doesn't know whether they're giving her HIV, hepatitis C, or whatever. So, buyer beware. The entire subculture of prison is retarded. The subculture retards growth, spiritual growth, psychological growth, mental growth are thwarted in prisons. They are thwarted. And back to the 19-year-old. When you lock up a 19-year-old with a 5-year sentence, it's hell and high water. This young man, will be forced to join a gang. And let's just deal with it for a moment. Let me elucidate it just a little bit. If it's a white inmate, white inmates are not allowed to take psychotropic medications by their colleagues, if you will, their comrades. If you're white in a California prison, you cannot take psych meds. It's one of their rules. Okay? So if you got this severely psychologically ill guy and he's psychologically unstable, now you're forcing him to go off of his medication. Ipso facto, that's where a lot of the crimes, the fights, the riots come from. Guys who are not taking their medication. And white guys have to run with white guys. Black guys have to hang out with black guys. And if you cross certain lines, there go another horn for you, California only. If you cross certain lines, you will be quote unquote dealt with, meaning you'll get your butt kicked. You may even get stabbed. So I said all of that to say this. When you put a 19-year-old in there, if he makes it out in 5 years' time, the stuff he had to see, the things he had to witness, the things by which he was victimized, the stuff that happened to him will literally change him for life, and probably mostly for the bad, for the worse. And so we have to do something about asking our politicians and talking to lawmakers about why are we sending 19-year-old kids, first-termers, etc., who didn't make a mistake, they were born into a mistake. Why are we sending them to adult prisons? Because the prison will rub off on them. And when they get out, they'll be your neighbors. When they get out, they will be living in your neighborhood, shopping in your grocery stores and malls, riding your roads and bridges and streets with you. What kind of person will this person be when they've come out of a virtual hell, a literal hell? Because that's what prisons are. Remember, the rich get richer, the poor get prison. Ask Ethan Couch. Ask O.J. Simpson when he had nearly $20 million. You'll excuse me again, I'm sorry. $20 million. What happened to his murder trial? 2 counts. How many black guys do you know who has been accused of killing 2 white people, put on trial, walked out of the courtroom a free man? Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Bob Blazier, Barry Scheck. And I'm not thinking O.J. I'm not thankful about O.J. He's really kind of irrelevant to me. I'm thanking God for great lawyers who believe in their clients, who believe that every man is entitled to a fair trial. That's who I'm applauding. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Sherman D. Manning. I repeat, tautology. Repetition is the mother of skill. What I would like for you to do is go buy the book, The Truth About O.J. Simpson, Race, Class, Money, and Justice. It's on Amazon.com and in local bookstores. What I would also like for you to do is to tell others about this podcast. Friend me on Facebook. Let me know you're out there listening. I need to know that you're listening, and I would like to know who's listening. I am Sherman D. Manning. We'll meet you in a few days for Making a Murderer. It's coming. It ought to be awesome as many times as we've had to delay it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I am Sherman D. Manning for the last time. I encourage you to pick up a copy of The Truth About O.J. Simpson, Race, Class, Money, and Justice. I'm going to have to sign off for now, and I'll catch you all on the rebound. Remember, you can make a difference. You really, really can if you just serve somebody else. Jesus said, the greatest among you shall be the servant, not the leader, not the preacher, not the teacher, not the father, not the priest, but shall be your servant. And so I'm calling people forth to serve one another. Serve one another with happiness. Serve one another with diligence. Serve one another with a smile on your face. And I found that the more you smile, the better you feel. You cannot frown and feel good. You cannot smile and feel bad. Try it. Try smiling with the biggest smile you can smile with and see if you can make yourself sad simultaneously. It's not going to happen. It won't happen. Not simultaneously. Happiness releases chemicals in the brain. Smiles release chemicals in the brain that cause you to feel good. So smile, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, smile. I know life is rough and life is tough, and if you keep living long enough, life will kick your posterior anatomy. It will beat you down. But having done all to stand, stand therefore and see the salvation of the Lord. Sometimes when I've done all I can do, I put it in his hand. I put it in his hands and tell him, Lord, it's yours now.